President Biden is taking aim at asylum in America. The president announced a new order that seeks to keep people out of the country. It seeks to pretty much seal the southern border, repelling would-be asylum seekers. Rejecting persecuted people, sending them home where they could face harm, contradicts our principles and our laws. But there's a possible upside to this asylum ban. You see, it could actually help certain asylum seekers. In this video, I'm going to explain President Biden's asylum ban and then tell you about a class of asylum applicants who may actually benefit from it. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government, but now, as an asylum lawyer, well, I help immigrants all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. Let me know in the comments if you've got an asylum case pending, or maybe you're considering applying for asylum. And listen, I'd especially like to hear from you if you've been waiting for an asylum interview with USCIS for multiple years. All right, let's jump in. First, what is this ban all about? Well, President Biden has issued an executive order that essentially suspends asylum claims at the southern border of the United States, marking a significant shift in the country's approach to handling claims for protection. This move is intended to deter illegal border crossings, an issue that has impacted Biden's political standing as he approaches the November presidential election. The order, which took effect Wednesday, June 5th, 2024, will remain in place unless the government certifies that fewer than 1,500 people per day, on average, crossed the border in any given 7-day period. Now, if that happens, but then the number exceeds 2,500 per day on average in a given 7-day period, then the order can be reinstated. Now, recent data shows around 3,500 people crossing without authorization daily, indicating that numbers would need to drop substantially for the suspension to end. Exceptions to the order include unaccompanied immigrant children, human trafficking victims, visa holders, and people who are facing serious medical emergencies or life-threatening situations. Also, people who schedule an appointment with the CBP-1 app or who come to the border through one of several special parole programs for which they've gotten a travel authorization in advance, well, they will not be subjected to this asylum ban. Under the new order, most migrants who come to the border and ask for asylum will face a more stringent process. Now, instead of being asked if they fear harm upon their return to their home country, migrants will have to volunteer such claims without prompting, known as the shout test. So, in other words, they have to go out of their way to either explicitly ask for asylum or somehow signify in a very clear way that they fear being harmed in their country. And if they don't do that, well, they won't get any kind of asylum screening, and they could actually just be deported pretty much right away in some cases. So the bottom line is that while the ban is in effect, most people who come to the border seeking asylum won't qualify for asylum, and most likewise will not be able to get other forms of protection, though not as beneficial as asylum would allow them to remain in the country. The United States will rely on Mexico to immediately take back its own nationals, while migrants from other countries may be detained while transportation is arranged. The Department of Homeland Security will attempt to keep those requesting protection in detention rather than releasing them out into the country. This is really going to test the government's resources. By the way, if you want to maximize your chances for asylum success, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss the insights that I share here on this channel. All right, now immigration advocates have announced their intention to sue to stop this measure, the asylum ban, and the outcome remains uncertain. Similar asylum restrictions issued by the Trump administration in 2018 and then by the Biden administration in early 2023 were blocked by federal courts, with some of those decisions being upheld by appeals courts and even the Supreme Court. The current executive order has drawn criticism from immigration advocates who argue that it effectively suspends the asylum system for people crossing the border and could result in refugees being sent back to dangerous or even life-threatening situations. The order violates both domestic American law and the country's international commitments. The Biden administration, for its part, maintains that the current situation is a direct result of Congress's failure to update the broken immigration and asylum system. Now, two previous bipartisan bills that would have cracked down on immigration, including at the border, were thwarted by Republicans in Congress after Donald Trump asked them to torpedo the proposals. You see, Trump prefers chaos at the border because it makes Biden look bad and helps Trump in the polls in the run-up to the elections. Okay, so that's the ban. Not good news for people who believe in America's promise as a beacon of light for persecuted persons from all corners of the world, and who believe in honoring our international commitments and complying with domestic law, which clearly enshrines a right to seek asylum at the border or after crossing it illegally. But take heart, I'm an optimist, and I'm happy to tell you about a possible silver lining as a result of this asylum ban. You see, it might actually benefit certain asylum seekers. Specifically, it could lead to much faster processing of affirmative asylum claims. Now, these are the asylum applications of people with a case pending with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, known as USCIS for its initials, rather than in immigration court. So we're talking here mainly about people who either came to the United States with a visa or through a parole program that gave them permission to be here for a certain time, and then they decided to apply for asylum. To be clear, these are people who are not in deportation proceedings. So it's still early days. This asylum ban is brand new, so I can't guarantee that this is how things will work out, but I am fairly optimistic that the wait time for getting an interview could drop drastically for cases at USCIS. That's my theory. And here's why I think this could happen. You see, USCIS does actually try to schedule interviews as soon as possible after someone applies for asylum. That's their goal. And actually, for a while, that was happening. You see, a few years ago, after USCIS switched to a formal policy of trying to do interviews quickly after application, we were, in fact, seeing most people get their interview within just 2 or 3 months after applying for asylum. Sometimes it was even sooner. But that changed, and now people are waiting a long time. Many months, even years, unfortunately. So why did it change? Well, there's a policy that says that USCIS must prioritize over all else doing credible fear interviews. Now, these are interviews with people who come to the border, and they're carried out by asylum officers, the same officers who do asylum interviews. And when they're doing credible fear interviews, well, they can't be doing asylum interviews. And this is a principal reason why the backlog of affirmative asylum cases has continued to grow recently. Asylum officers have been pulled from doing those affirmative asylum interviews and asked to do credible fear interviews, because those, the credible fear interviews, get priority. More people coming to the border and seeking asylum means more credible fear interviews and fewer asylum interviews. Fewer asylum interviews means longer wait times for asylum seekers with USCIS. The queue just keeps growing. But if the asylum ban has its intended effect, there will be a drastic drop in engagements at the border and an accompanying drop in credible fear interviews. So the asylum ban could free up officers to do more asylum interviews, allowing USCIS to get back on track, possibly even doing interviews within months or even weeks for applicants going forward. So people who apply for asylum in the coming months, they could actually get their interviews fast. No guarantees, but I'm actually fairly optimistic that this could happen. But what about people who are already in the backlog? People who've been waiting months or even years for an interview? Well, I unfortunately don't think the asylum ban will help many of them. It's true that USCIS does designate a tiny portion of its personnel to cut into the backlog by interviewing people who've been waiting for a long time, but until they make a major change to devote significantly more resources to this issue, well, I don't think we'll see that much progress. And so for that reason, if you've been waiting for years for an asylum interview, then your best bet to move your case forward is to sue the government in a mandamus lawsuit. I'll leave a link in the video description to a free training that I created all about that topic. If you're ready to take the next step and get help with your asylum case, then call my office today. That number is 713-909-0401. And remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you live. Call us today and schedule an asylum strategy session so that we can help you secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning. It's an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.